Hello, everyone. The City of Coquitlam staff would like to begin by acknowledging with respect and gratitude today that we are hosting this event on the traditional and ancestral territory of the Coast Salish peoples and the home of the Coquitlam First Nation. We are so fortunate to live and work on this beautiful land of freshwater, forest, and mountains. Welcome to the City of Coquitlam's Recreational Facility Innovation Lecture Series. This is part 1 of 4, Aquatic Facilities. The City of Coquitlam is planning more than a dozen major recreation and cultural facilities in the next 10 to 15 years. In July 2020, City Council approved the development of a new major recreation and cultural facilities roadmap, a user-friendly document that will distill and map the complex process of funding, designing, constructing, and operating facility projects. In planning for these works, we are hosting this lecture series to capture opportunities for innovative ideas for a number of new and renewed facilities, and in particular for ideas about how to design inclusive and welcoming facilities. And we're looking at what emerging trends are happening in recreation facility design. I'm Tina Mack, Manager of Recreation and Culture Facility Planning at the City. And on my team, I have Narita Aiko. Narita is here, and Conrad Boychuk. Conrad is here as well. Narita is a City of Coquitlam employee, and Conrad is a retired architect representing IAKS, and he's supporting the questions and answer period today. We also have 2 registered sign language interpreters with us today. To pin the ASL videos, click the 3 dots on the upper right corner of your video and select the pin option. If you have the latest Zoom version, you can pin the videos of both sign language interpreters. In addition, we have Dennis Sandstrom and Liz Stoppelman from the consulting firm HDR Inc., who will be providing technical support in the background of this lecture series. If you have any questions during the lecture that you would like to pose to either the panel or city staff, you can enter it here at Slido anonymously. Not only can you pose questions here, but you can also click like of the questions you're seeing there. And while we won't have a lot of time today to get through all the questions, we will be hoping to add a few that come through this process. So you can either enter slido.com with the account number there on the website, or use the QR code. Now, without further ado, we're going to move into the session. We're going to hear from a panel, I'm so excited, of local and international practicing architects and designers. They're going to share their insights and experiences to help develop our roadmap and to share this information with our colleagues and industry professionals. In addition to the benefits to our city, we recognize that sharing these conversations as public events could benefit many. Therefore, we're going to be recording these sessions and posting them on our website should you like to view them following or share this information. Now, I'd like to take the time to introduce our panelists one at a time, starting with Daryl Condon, the Managing Principal at HCMA Architects. I'll introduce them each in turn, and each will take about 4 minutes to share some amazing examples from their practices of innovative aquatic facilities. Daryl, over to you.
Great, thank you. It's a pleasure to be here, sharing a little bit of our perspective on aquatics. So, as mentioned, I'm Daryl Condon, Managing Partner at HCMA. We are located in Vancouver as well as in Victoria and Edmonton. Now, can I control the slides myself, or do I need somebody to help me with that? If I go to the next slide, please. So in the next slide as well. So we're fortunate in the type of work we do for public sector clients across the country to be involved in community-oriented facilities in various contexts, including over around 30 aquatic centers in the country. Next slide, please. So we've done we've been involved in projects from the very large, most competitive type facilities to the very small, some very leisure focused, but most community focused. Most projects in Canada are delivered by local governments, by municipalities, and so typically have a very strong community focus. And the next slide. So a couple of projects I just want to highlight. You can go into the next slide as well. So the Grandview Heights Aquatic Center in Surrey is a recent project, and I'm showing it for a couple of reasons. One, it involves a lot of state-of-the-art thinking around recreation facility planning. It's got a very large competitive tank. And the next slide, please. Vibrant leisure area as well. And if you see in the next slide, the floor plan, it has the sort of typical attributes of a community facility with a lap pool and a leisure pool and state-of-the-art universal change room design. Now, what's interesting is this project is almost identical in size and budget to the next project that I want to show you, which is in the city of Richmond, in the Minoru Center for Active Living, which opened last year. And this project, although it's the same area and the same relative cost, is actually quite a different facility. And they chose to divide the water up in a very different way. And in the next slide, we'll show the floor plan. You'll see that they actually took the water area of a 50-meter pool and divided into two 25-meter pools with different depth profiles and temperatures. And the reason for that is the need is very different. And I think the point is that no two aquatic facilities today are alike. The challenge is to design facilities to suit the very specific requirements in every community. And the next series of projects I want to just very quickly show you are some things that are going on in the Lower Mainland. So in the area of around Coquitlam, there's a number of projects that will affect what you do because the users are mobile and people will visit. So in New Westminster, they're currently in the process of replacing the aging Canada Games pool, and it'll have a 50-meter pool and leisure pool. Burnaby as well is in the process of replacing its Burnaby Lake complex, the CG Brown pool, with a very large complex of recreation and competitively focused water. So multiple pool tanks involved here, and you can see the next slide. It's part of a very comprehensive project, and here there's a 10-lane 50-meter pool, warm-up pool, and leisure pool. And they've taken an approach that's very much balancing the needs of competitive use and recreation use as well. And you can just scroll through the next couple of images that show the project both in its sort of more competitive mode and then following in a very, very versatile community use. And that really is the key, is providing a hybrid. And also, maybe not quite as large, but the next project, North Vancouver, is also replacing a facility, the Harry Jerome Center. And I think the point being that in a context like the Lower Mainland, people are very mobile, and ideally you position yourself within that context so that your users are served and that the facilities complement one another. So I think I'll leave it at that and look forward to the discussion portion of the section. So thank you.
Thank you very much, Daryl. Now over to Ernst Ulrich Tillmann from Germany. Ernst, over to you.
Yes, hello everybody. Hello from Germany. Yes, my name Ernst Ulrich Tillmann. You can call me Ernst. Next slide, please. That are my colleagues of 4A Architects based in Stuttgart, Germany. Next, please. We have also a small office in Moscow, and the team in Stuttgart is 45 employees. Team Moscow about 5 employees. Our bureau, our office was founded in 1990, 30 years ago now. Next slide, please. I want to give you a small overview of our work. We did about 30 aquatic facilities in Germany. This is a refurbishment of an outside pool in south of Germany. The pools are renovated in stainless steel, and the construction of the changing area in the background is old and is only refurbished. Next one, please. The next is another refurbishment, a small school pool with a small pool, only 60.6 meters long, 3 lanes. And it's also a refurbishment building from the 60s. And you see the ceiling, that's our design. We want to link our facilities with the outside. So the green color of the ceiling is the connection to the green outside. Next, please. This is also a refurbishment of a thermal pool, only a part of the whole big area. You see on the right side the old pool, and we put in this old pool 4 small pools on the left side with different water, cold, warm, a whirlpool, and a intensive salt pool in the background. And we refurbished it with totally new materials to create a completely new atmosphere. Next, please. This was our first family pool 20 years ago. We have won a competition, and it was possible to build this facility. It's a big one with different water pools, a leisure pool in front, 25 meter pool, slides, a big sauna, children's pool, thermal pool, to get involved everybody and every people into this pool. Next, please. Yes, it's a very new one. It's a sports and school pool, and you can see a new construction, everything wooden, totally transparent facades. Also the same idea to connect the inside and the outside. Next, please. This is in Offenburg, a family pool with a big sports part, a 25 meter pool, a diving pool, and a learning pool. You see it on this slide, and on the right side there are also slides and leisure pools and a big sauna. Next, please. Now they are coming to thermal baths. This is one in the near of Berlin, and always nearly the same topic, to take the outside to the inside and the inside to the outside with a color. And these columns are not like soldiers on the front. They are like trees in the forest, and they're doing like this. Next, please. This is another thermal bath in the near of Cologne or Frankfurt. Also with different pools, with different water, salt water, cold pools, warm pools, a big sauna, and outside pools. Next, please. And this is a very high level pool we did in Moscow. It's one of our most expensive projects we did ever, with natural stone, with also different pools, with 3 saunas, with a wellness part. On the right side, you see this relaxation room in the middle of a pool, and you see it's cladded with leaf gold, real leaf gold on the right side. It's a fantastic project, and it's also more than 15 years old now. Next, please. And that's one of our newest projects. It's built in a valley, also a competition, first prize in a valley, and the pools we have put into the hill. You see it on the left, and the roofs are coming out of the hill, and also here the landscape is is floating on the roof, and the outside pools are going inside. So the connection between inside and outside is very special and very intensive. That was a little overview of our work, and we'll talk about these points. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Ernst. Looking forward to hearing how we can incorporate some of those thermal pools into our North American models. But now,
Thanks.
Thank you. Over to Mike Hall partner, at Faulkner Browns in the UK, our last panelist.
Thank you very much, Tina. No, delighted to be on the panel. So yeah, I'm a partner at Faulkner Browns. We're situated in Newcastle in the UK. We're a bureau of 100 architects. We specialise in sport and leisure. That's the most significant portion of our workload. Next slide, please. But we've got a profile that's largely national, but we've historically had a large European base, but also we work internationally, mainly with velodromes, aquatic centres, and some specialist facilities like indoor ski slopes. Next slide, please. Tina mentioned at the beginning IAKS, and we're particularly proud of the awards that we've picked up over the years that celebrate both good design and the operational import and the significance of client, and that's what we're particularly proud of with this award system. Next slide. But in terms of our design DNA, what we feel this product is about goes back a number of years to the first leisure pool that we did in the UK, which was an all leisure offer, now sadly demolished. Next slide, please. And another project which almost kind of sets another part of the triangle that represents aquatics, if you like, is event pools and the importance. Darryl mentioned this at the beginning, but 50-meter pools, and having undertaken the first international competition pool in the UK a number of years ago, that's another part of the aquatic spectrum, which is very, very important. Next slide, please. And then the kind of third component of that is, this is actually a very modest 50-meter pool, but it's what we would call a training pool at a university in Loughborough. It's only about 2,000 square meters, but it's filled with technology and it's supporting high performance swimming. So those three components almost kind of set out a spectrum with community swimming sitting in the middle of that. Next slide, please. And I guess we passionately believe that, you know, water, there's something absolutely fascinating. It's in our DNA as human beings, this love of water. Next slide, please. But when we're designing facilities, we have to be really, really clear about that spectrum, whether it's for really young people or whether it's about fun. Is it about teaching? Is it about fitness? Is it about competition? It's actually very difficult to get all of those in one pool. But just bringing that spectrum up to date, that the slide on the screen is a recently opened facility that we did, which is stacked leisure. There's leisure on 3 levels in this very tight city centre site. So this is a water park, right, tightly packed in a very kind of urban context. Next slide, please. And an event pool that's kind of FINA compliant, very, very large project that we completed for the UAE. Next slide, please. And then again, seeing the changes over that, the design DNA for aquatics that I've kind of mentioned at the outset, we're seeing that evolve as time goes by. So even universities moving towards a relationship of dealing with the health and well-being of their students, but also inviting the community into those projects. Next slide, please. This project in Derby is about to open in about 4 months' time. Next slide, please. But it probably is one of those pools that really does get most of that aquatics continuum of, on the left, you've got leisure, for the whole range of young tots to kind of teenagers. In the middle, there's a teaching pool under number 2. And on the right, there's a very highly flexible 50-meter pool for performance. So really, you know, a question that we'll come on to in the discussion session is the ability for strategic planning to cater for most of these activities. And then I think moving on to the last slide is really just a project that we're seeing as part of a trend, particularly in London, where we're stacking facilities in order to safeguard important open space, but also to enable developments such as residential that supports this. So very much looking forward to the next part of the session. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Mike, and thank you, Daryl and Ernst as well, for your succinct introductions. We're tracking well on time. I'm going to hand the floor over now to you three and Conrad Boychuk for our conversation. Over to you, Conrad.
Thank you, Tina. The first thing I want to do is thank the City of Coquitlam for undertaking this 4 panelist series event. It's particularly satisfying for me because I know all of the panelists, and all of us have been involved in transfers of knowledge in the past. And it's really exciting that this is the first time that such an event has actually happened in my backyard as opposed to somewhere in Europe. So again, thank you for undertaking this very exciting series of panel discussions and transfer of knowledge. What we're going to be doing is I'm going to be asking 4 main questions of the panelists. I will then ask a question that I prepared, taking advantage of some of their background and expertise. And then we'll go to polling questions or questions that have been submitted to our electronic system here so that we can put those to the panelists. So I will start with the first question of the 4 main questions. And this is, what are the current trends in aquatic facility spaces? And because aquatic facility spaces tend to reflect programmatic requirements or intent, what are some of those evolving trends in terms of where the programs are going? And to make it a little bit more interesting, I would like to start with the European perspective. So Ernst, if you could go first on this, and then Tom, and then Daryl, if you can wrap up with more of a local perspective.
Okay, Conrad, thank you for this question. I think it's not so easy to recognize trends in Germany, but I think there are 2 trends I can see here in Germany. One is we called it Kombibad. It's an outside pool and an inside pool together. In the former times, these 2 kinds of aquatic facilities were totally on different locations. And now, because of the climate change, the weather in Germany is more extremely. We have hot days, and afterwards, some days they are very cold. So in summer, the outside pools were open, and in winter, the inside pools were open. And now we want to bring them together in Germany so that we can switch from one to the other from day to day. And that has some advantages. One is that we can use the same stuff for both. And the second is that the technical facilities can be combined. This is one of the trends I see in Germany. And another one is to upgrade and to refurbish pools. And I think, Conrad, we will talk about this later.
Okay. So, Mike, if you could follow up with your response to the question.
Yeah, surely, Conrad. Interesting enough, if you'd have asked this 18 months ago, I might have given you a slightly different answer. But in terms of the kind of programming perspective, I would say it's actually quite interesting because it's quite frustrating in terms of the sector, how little innovation there has been in terms of the kinds of water products. If you look what we were doing 30 years ago with a combination of tanks, lazy rivers, wave pools, flume rides, the industry that's providing those has provided very little innovation, if we're honest, and we're kind of having to kind of push that agenda forward. I think I would agree with Ernst. You know, certainly post-COVID, I think people's attitude to open water swimming, cold swimming is going to change the dial in terms of our attitude to the traditional Lido. I could see that as a model that was very popular in the 20s in the UK. We're seeing quite a lot of interest in that coming back. And I think also the dial has shifted from, for the last 15 years, what was mostly lap swimming. There's been a move back to acknowledging that fun is important, that health and well-being is important, and it isn't always about swimming from one end of a 25-meter pool to another in the shortest time. So I think there's some changes that are evolving. I think COVID will nudge other aspects of sport, leisure, and particularly aquatics design in a certain direction.
Okay, Daryl.
Yeah, you know, from a Canadian context, it's important to recognize that it's not a single context. The way that pools are designed and operated in British Columbia is actually quite different than the culture in Alberta even, and in Ontario it's vastly different, in Quebec as well. So we see nationally a lot of different approaches to operations, and it results in different design approaches. However, we have seen some threads that are constant. We've seen an increasing shift towards greater flexibility, greater focus on wellness and rehabilitation, shift away from programmed, structured programming to individually driven. You know, that aligns with the broader trends within the recreation sector as well. But we approach aquatic design using 6 different aquatic activities, and we've been tracking the various priorities over the last 30 years. And certain aspects like competitive swimming, fitness swimming, swim lessons have been pretty static in terms of the need. We can talk a little bit about whether or not those needs are being met, but I think that the need has been fairly static. Rehabilitation has been something we've seen a shift, and we're going to continue to see a shift from the medical community into the community. And leisure has certainly grown. But the other area that we've really been focusing on has been a dramatic increase in the social role that these facilities play over the last 30 years. And so recognizing that simply being in a space or relaxing is also a part of the activity. And that's not something we really paid a lot of attention to 25 years ago. And it's something that has been just a steady march of increased importance. And one other thing I'd say is that some of the programming challenges we're seeing with a diverse community. And of course, we know how important that is, but you know, accommodating different cultural differences and needs within facilities is a significant challenge that I think we're still trying to come to terms with.
Okay. Thank you, Daryl. I just want to ask a question before I get on to the next formal question, and it picks up on some of what Ernst said, along with Mike's comment on the lack of innovative new products out there in terms of planning for especially the leisure side of water. And I'm wondering if there is a trend to go more towards, or to start to incorporate things that we might associate typically with water parks and the water park industry. We have a project in the Lower Mainland that recently opened in Aldergrove, which has a large water park type component. It's an outdoor facility. And I think, Daryl, there was something in Windsor as well that might have been an indoor type of thing. I don't know how successful these first steps are, but is there a shift in some of the technical pieces that contribute to the aquatic experience? Mike, I saw the hand.
Yeah, I was just, it's important when we're, having this discussion about aquatics, we sometimes tend to think of water parks as though because they're commercial, that they're somehow out there as a separate product. And I think, you know, we tend to sort of, probably rightly for the most part, focus on what the municipality's responsibility is. But as a spectrum of activity, having fun is a really important part. And we might want to spend quite a bit of money and be prepared to, because commercial water parks make money. But in an ideal world, some of that can come into our municipal facility. And we are seeing that trend. That example of Coventry, they had a strategy where they had 3 or 4 small community pools, but they wanted this major attraction right in the city centre. So it was kind of changing that typology of, you know, the kind of octopus arms of flumes, bringing it, capturing it in a city centre, and having fun as part of a municipal offer. So that's certainly a change that we are seeing, more of that dimension coming into our municipal pools.
My own experience in terms of leisure facilities is that the Europeans have tended in some ways to be ahead of us here in North America. And when we see a good idea there, it's hard to really get it to have traction in North America. So Daryl, a question to you regarding Windsor. And I don't know whether that was a successful model, but do you see that there's a spin-off from that kind of thing from a Canadian perspective, or is that concept not really finding its traction yet?
You know, it's hard to answer that with a single answer, because I think it's very situational. You know, the Windsor example with a 50,000 square foot indoor water park attached to a competitive facility was very unique and not something that we really expect to see replicated in most municipalities. However, we are seeing movement from the commercial water park industry into the municipal realm. Oftentimes it is chasing that elusive youth market, you know, those users that are in the pools until they reach their, you know, mid-teens and then disappear until they decide to swim fitness links or have a family later on. And so those adrenaline inducing, more risky activities. So for instance, in Kelowna, I think was the first locally to incorporate an indoor surf ride, a wave rider, which we also put into our project in Windsor. But here, that's where we come up with the tension between the risk tolerance of a local government and the risk tolerance of a water park operator are two very different things. And so we see some tension in that area. And I guess the other tension we see is the challenge we have with our Canadian regulatory context to integrate some of the things that we see in Europe as well. I know Ernst, the facility he showed in Tuttlingen, which is an amazing facility, has a wave generation ball in one of the leisure pools. Yeah. We've tried 3 or 4 times to get that approved in Canada, and it's just impossible for us to get approval because we've got a very conservative regulatory framework, and so we have to deal with that here as well.
Thanks, Daryl. I want to move on so that we get to all of our questions. The second question: how can aquatics facilities specifically target both youth and active or semi-active seniors? And I'd like to mix this up a little bit. So, Mike, if you could start on this one.
Yeah, I think, I'll be honest, what we're not good enough at is making provision for seniors. I think, you know, typical community pool in the UK has program time for swim clubs, for swimming lessons. And yes, there's an early morning session for seniors typically, but in most facilities, we're not good enough at understanding the experience that seniors need, that sort of, you know, the journey that they require, the smiley face, you know, somewhere to put a towel, somewhere to have a chat, the socializing. We need to get better at that. We're cognizant of it. But again, it comes down to this kind of spectrum of what young people need. Daryl mentioned, you know, what's in these facilities for teenagers. But, you know, I think we're making moves, but I think we need to be better. The seniors sector is a critical sector moving forward from a kind of health and well-being dimension. And yeah, we certainly need to do more on that.
Okay. Daryl, if you could be the second person here.
Yeah, so I showed the Minoru Center for Active Living project in my presentation. So one of the primary reasons that facility did not have a 50-meter pool was because of its connection to an older adults center. And it was trying to, and I think it was because it was focused on that older adult population, it made more sense to have two different 25-meter pools with different temperatures, because part of the challenge we get in the tension between the sort of fitness or the youth and seniors is often water temperature. And so the more bodies of water you can have, the more variability you can have in water temperature. And so, you know, there's swim lanes in 3 different water temperatures in that facility, and that's specifically to appeal to seniors and adults and youth with different needs. You know, the coldest for the most fitness oriented, and the warmest for the most rehabilitation focused. And so those are some of the things that we're seeing in response to trying to address the need of seniors. And of course, when you've got a system of facilities like they do in Richmond, you can focus a facility in that manner.
Ernst, your office especially gets involved in projects that have spas or a spa kind of wellness component, and that might speak a little bit more to the elderly population. Can you give us your insight in terms of this question?
I think we don't make a difference in Germany between older and younger people. Our facilities should be open for everybody. Of course, in our thermal baths, there are mostly elder people or people without children, and but in this family facilities we build, there are different places, more for older people, more for younger people. There are the slide areas for the younger people, and the 25-meter pool perhaps for the older people, and the sauna for the older people, a children pool, so that everybody can find something in this facility. And we don't really make a difference, I think.
Okay. I'll go to the third question. How can design champion exclusive or inclusive and diverse participation? How can you deliver an appropriate level of programming for all members of the community? And this kind of picks up on not necessarily the previous question, but certainly some of the answers from the previous question. So if Daryl, if you could start us off on this one.
Yeah, this is a big challenge in most facilities, and it's probably one of the most active conversations in the early design process. And it depends so much on the size of facility that you're building as well. In smaller communities where facilities are much smaller, it's much more challenging to have versatility. But you deal with you create inclusion through variety and through providing options for people. And that really requires a large enough facility to be able to balance, you know, different temperatures, different tanks. But some of the other areas we're certainly seeing in the realm of aquatic change rooms. In Canada, there's been a significant shift in the design of change rooms over the last 25 years. That's still an ongoing process, very much focused on inclusion and access. And I would then say maybe one of our biggest challenges right now as an industry here in Canada is how to deal with cultural inclusion. We're seeing an increased demand for women's only swims and privacy swims, and some of the other attributes and activities that are desirable come into conflict in terms of transparency and windows and other aspects. And so we're still coming to terms with how to deal with some of the more complicated aspects of inclusion as well.
Okay, thanks. Ernst, if you could respond to the question.
Yes, in Germany, we have a lot of different aquatic facilities depending on the target groups. Not every facility should have the same program. We have pure sport pools with 25 or 50-meter pools, diving pools, visitor galleries. That's only for sport. We have family pools. They have nearly everything. I said it before, like our pool in Tuttlingen. We have thermal baths. They are totally different, and mostly for relaxing and for for relaxing with warm, cold water, with sauna, not for children, for example. And we have fun pools. Mike, you have talked about that, and only outdoor pools. And if there is a larger community, they don't have only one facility, then they can target the different pools to specific target groups. And inclusive participation, okay, that's also in Germany a big deal. Every facility must be for disabled people, for blind people, and it's yes, we have to integrate it in every facility.
Okay, thanks, Ernst. Michael.
Yeah, no, this is likewise. This is a really big discussion piece, particularly where we're in communities, say in London, the BRITANNIA scheme I showed, where we're in discussion with different religious groups, where we've got, say, a kind of, whether it's a Jewish population or a Muslim population, aspects of trying to create a protected route to a pool, which is effectively kind of self-contained. So creating flexible solutions to allow different cultural requirements is, it's just an increasing thing we have to be able to deal with. And as Ernst said, we can't do it on every project. There's certain projects where connection with the outside natural light means we can't get complete discrete environments, but certainly the changing rooms are a key area trying to achieve flexibility and a wide range of different uses. So pools and changing both have their particular challenges.
Okay, thank you. I'm going to ask the last question, and I'm going to ask for a fairly quick answer on it because we've got some questions coming in from the folks watching. Can the European tradition of spas become an integral or integrated aspect of North American aquatic facilities? And Ernst, why don't you start us off on this, and then we'll go to Mike and then Daryl.
Yes, I hope so. I hope we can build a thermal bath in Canada. We would like to do it, but I think I don't know the Canadian market if it's possible or not. I think Daryl is a specialist in this. I would like to do this, or to help, or to bring my experience to Canada.
Yeah, it's interesting. We have a similar thing here in England. We go to Germany and we see these wonderful spas, and we have a spa of certain sorts on most projects, but it is just not in our culture. The spa experience that Ernst designs these beautiful buildings for is not part of. So you talk about a European perspective, Conrad. It's not an English or a UK perspective.
I know.
It's quite small scale. So good luck.
Daryl.
Yeah, I mean, we really believe that there's aspects of the European model that are transferable, and we've been bringing learnings from those facilities into our facilities here in Canada. Again, the Minoru example integrates a number of features that we would here in this context describe as wellness amenities, but there are some big cultural differences, both in terms of how they're operated, and not a small factor is that in many of the facilities in Europe, people are nude in the facilities, whereas in our culture here that would just simply not be acceptable. But it's part of the therapeutic process, and so there's some significant cultural norms that are barriers. Now, we're also seeing where it has its place more specifically in our context is in the private sector, the Scandinav spa type models where, they're high-end resort type experiences. But I do think there's more that we can bring and learn, and we're certainly trying to do that.
Okay, so I'm going to go to the individual questions that I prepared for each of you, and I'm going to ask you to be as brief as you can, and I'll make my question as brief as I can. The first question is to Daryl, and just a recognition that years ago there weren't very many examples of 50-meter water in Vancouver or the Lower Mainland, and at this point we're seeing a lot of it. Just a lot of facilities are having that quantity of water. So is this an anomaly? This not going to last very long? Is this a correction, or are we seeing part of a new trend?
Yeah, it is really interesting. I think right now there's 11 50-meter pools in the Lower Mainland, or at least built or in the process of being built. When I did my first project in Langley, there was 4, and so we've seen a big increase, which might seem like a lot. And then you look at Quebec, where there's over 50-meter pools, and you realize, well, maybe we don't have enough, and yet we have more than Ontario. So, there's significant differences, often tied to the funding model. Now, in most cases locally, where people are building 50-meter pools, it's not about the 50-meter pool need so much as about having lots of water to give versatility and water area. Because it would be a mistake to think, because we've built a lot of 50-meter pools lately, that the needs of the competitive users are well met in our region, because they're really not. I think if you talk to the competitive swim clubs, they would correctly state that even though we have all these pools, we really don't have a very good network of competitive-oriented facilities. And so there isn't a single answer to that, but we expect to see that trend continue. Because it does provide so much operational flexibility.
Okay, thank you. A question to Ernst, and this speaks to your portfolio of projects that are major renovations as well as new builds. So do you anticipate a change in the balance between new builds and renovations in Europe? Is there a trend here? Why do we see the extent of renovations that we do, and they've all been extremely well done, versus when we look at certainly the Lower Mainland, we're actually replacing old facilities with new facilities?
Yes, Konrad. In Germany, every local community has one or more aquatic facility. Many of these facilities are 40 years old or even older, and these buildings are in a very bad condition. The pools are leaking, chlorine and salt has destroyed the concrete and the reinforcement. So the problems are very big. And then the question is, shall we upgrade it, or shall we demolish it and build new? And the municipalities, they have to decide what to do. And first you have to check and evaluate whether the building in detail and compare the demolition with a new building, which is cheaper or better. In many cases, it makes sense to renovate because it saves time, and the building time is much shorter than to demolish and to build it new. And under the motto of sustainability, it's of course much better because it saves energy, gray energy, and it makes sense. And if you and we have a lot of projects, we dismantle them to the shell and then build it up again with new materials and a new interior, and it's looking like a complete new building. And buildings refurbished like this, they can stay for another 30 or 40 years.
Okay, thank you. And a question to Mike, and this recognizes that your firm has won so many IKS awards, but two of the most recent ones, SPORTCAMPUS ZUIDERPARK in the Netherlands and the Derby Arena, as opposed to the one that you're working on that's an aquatics facility, both of those projects are without water. So is there a trend here? Is this an anomaly, and is the expansion of different program types of spaces in the facility coming at the expense of the aquatics component?
I would say absolutely not. It isn't a trend. It's just that the first picture that you showed was a project we did over 25 years ago, Sertogenbosch, that had performance, Olympic ice pad, it had leisure ice, it had lane swimming, it had a big leisure water offer. And that was a kind of highly innovative project, highly successful, but a point of its time. We're now seeing a much more nuanced strategic approach to sport, whether it's in Holland or in the UK. And so the ZUIDERPARK Sports Campus project was very much a demand at national level for a number of national sports, also incorporating universities and some schools. So it was very much a product of a particular strategic requirement. The fact that it didn't have a pool in it, I don't think is a trend. It's just the fact that water is dealt with elsewhere in the city with other high quality facilities. I think it does reflect, though, that we are seeing a big change in the sort of the strategy of different sports projects. And so even a water only project, we wouldn't anticipate doing a Sertogenbosch again. I think the elements will be really, really tightly focused about the community needs and the individual kind of regional planning model. So again, just this last slide you've got on here I've chosen a Dutch example. It's a competition that we've recently won. It's a very flexible lap pool with the ability to overlay some leisure experiences. So water's very much alive and kicking.
Okay, thank you, Mike. What I'd like to do now is pass the presentation back to Tina and find out if there are any questions that have come from the audience. So Tina.
Thank you very much, Conrad. Yeah, we do have two coming in. I'm sure there have been several, but the top two right now, I'm actually going to pick the last one because it's very interesting to me personally. The question is, are there innovative ideas that have not yet been incorporated into new facilities? Perhaps something you gentlemen have thought of and been unable to realize through your constructions. Missed opportunities, ideas you believe that should be considered.
So Daryl, okay, Mike, you start.
Well, I'm not going to directly answer the question, but in terms of the internal aspects of the pool, but what I anticipate in some of the inquiries we're getting is delivering pools in very different circumstances, partly as a result of a post-COVID situation, but we're looking at building pools in the high street, in city centres, as retail has its challenges. We're looking at models of small pools that can slot into vacant retail units. We're looking at stacked pools that can sit on other facilities. So we're anticipating that trend of delivering aquatics facilities in different ways to the traditional way we've delivered them. And certainly we see that as part of the future.
Ernst or Daryl, any comments?
I don't know, but I have only one idea. We have built in two of our thermal baths two rain clouds. We have never seen it before. It is a big rain field, 2 by 2 meters, and you can stay under it, put a button, and then the rain is coming down. And this is so popular. The people, it's running from the morning until the evening in all the time. It's very interesting. I've never seen it before. But it's a good idea.
Well, a couple of things that I would add. I mean, there's so many things we could talk probably for we could all probably talk for a couple of hours about things. But of course, we have a climate crisis, and in most municipalities, these facilities are the most energy intensive facilities in the network of municipal infrastructure. And so there's a great deal we need to do, and that is being done around creating energy efficient, net zero, more sustainable facilities. We're really proud of some of those innovations and commitment that municipalities in the Lower Mainland are making. And New West is a great example of that. The other thing I would say is from a health and wellness standpoint is water quality, air and water quality. We've seen a lot of focus on air quality. I think water quality is the next big move. We're currently bringing in some really interesting technology from Denmark that is significantly reducing or improving the water quality with lower energy solutions, and ultimately leading to, once our health acts become more progressive, to a much lower level of chlorine in our pool operations. And we've got a lot of work to do on a regulatory side to improve the health of our facilities. And that's one area where we're really pushing, and we'd love to see increased change moving forward.
Tina?
Yeah, thank you. We are running out of time, but I think we could do one more question here. There are two that are similar, so I'll pick this one that's come in from the participants. How do we ensure the operating cost of these facilities keeps them accessible to low-income families, and a welcoming space for everyone, including Indigenous diversity?
Daryl, why don't you start with that? Because that's very much a Lower Mainland Canadian kind of a question.
Yeah, it's a big challenge, but it's something we have to deal with no matter what the facility type is. It starts with a deep commitment to public engagement and listening, and really not assuming we have the answers when we go into facilities. The design processes that we use are as important as the design strategies that ultimately emerge from it to deal with these types of issues of inclusion and reconciliation. There isn't a single project that we're working on in Canada right now where it's not the first conversation is how to deal with these issues, which is a good thing, and I think is really necessary.
I wanted to put a spin off of that to Ernst, because you folks do a lot of spas and that type of wellness facility that Mike recognizes you don't really see in the UK. Is there a tier there? Is that kind of experience available to people with disadvantages in terms of financial, physical? Is it universally accessible, or is that for a paid membership?
No, it's accessible for everybody, but mostly it's not from the public. It's mostly private. Stefan Kannewischer, for example, he's a private operator, and he operates this kind of spas and thermal bath. And the price is even higher than in a public bath. So you have to pay more, and yes, so it's perhaps not everybody can go in, or not 12 times a year.
Okay, so we'll close this with Mike. I know you want to make a comment, and then Tina, you can close the session. Thank you.
No, it was just to say, I think that question is a really, really critical question for us designers and operators in this sector. We can do our bit to reduce staffing costs, to reduce energy in terms of sustainability. But the question is really about public values and how we regard this building typology and its outreach to people that can't necessarily afford to pay kind of full prices. So it's really how we target this building, and how politically where we spend our money to subsidize these kind of facilities. And I think it's we have exactly the same challenge in the UK, and it's going to be partly solved by partnerships with either commercial providers or university providers. But it's a massive question we're all having to deal with.
Thank you, Tina.
Oh, thank you, everybody, so much. I've really enjoyed the conversations. There's learnings for all of us, and it's amazing to have this cross-continent connection for our learnings. Unfortunately, we've run out of time today. We want to respect people's breakfast and dinner hours. So this concludes part 1 of the Recreation Facility Innovation Lecture Series. Again, thanks to our 3 panelists, Daryl, Ernst, and Mike, for taking the time out of your busy schedules to participate in our discussion. I wish we could carry on to support the sharing and to support the City of Coquitlam's work and its recreation facility roadmap. I would also like very much to thank our American Sign Language interpreters, our IT support, Dennis and Liz from HDR, and our own internal facilities team, Conrad Wojciech and Narita Aiko. The next lecture, please join us again every Wednesday this month, June 9th, same time, same place on Zoom. We're going to talk about sports facilities. Our panelists for next week will be Colleen McKenna, Associate Director of Sport, Recreation and Wellness at Canon Design in the US, Esben Danielson, Director of Culture at the City of Copenhagen, and Harold Foe, CEO of Romkust Design Group. So thank you again to everybody who watched today, and we hope to see you at the next lecture. Have a wonderful day and wonderful evening, folks. Take care.